All right, welcome. Okay, now we're live. Now all these tech issues are going well. Good afternoon, everyone. I will give us just a few minutes for some of our viewers to hop on, but welcome on this Thursday afternoon to our Ask the Experts edition for the month of November. We have a really wonderful topic, and we have the founders of His Breast Cancer Awareness with us today to talk all about men's breast cancer, risk reduction, and just to do a little bit of learning. They've been really wonderful partners of Unite for Her, and so we're super happy to have them with us. So, as always, we're streaming live on Facebook. We'll move through some of the most common questions that we may have surrounding men's breast cancer, diagnosis, different risks that come along with it. But certainly, I encourage everyone, if you have your own questions, we will be monitoring the chat on Facebook. So we'll have our special guests going through and monitoring that as well. So they're happy to answer your questions as well. So, first, before I get into the bios and introductions of our two special guests today, I do want to give a huge thanks to our sponsor. So this episode of Ask the Experts is presented by Merck, and we give a big thanks for allowing us to continue these educational series and to have topics to discuss with our community. So big thanks to Merck. So without further ado, let me start our introductions of our special guests from His Breast Cancer Awareness. So first, I'd like to introduce Harvey Singer. Harvey was born and raised in Philadelphia, so we have two local guests with us today. He now resides in California. He has a Bachelor of Science in Journalism from Temple University. He was diagnosed with male breast cancer at the age of 54 and early onset prostate cancer at the age of 56, just 18 months apart. Both had the BRCA mutation. He is the author of Sir, I Have Breast Cancer. He's still working full-time as a director of national accounts for Chef Works Inc., which is a uniform manufacturer for the restaurant and food service industry. And he says one job pays him and the other job rewards him. Don't we need that balance in life? He is the father to two amazing men, 36 and 38, and he is married for 42 years to his best friend, Donna, and says when he's not working or advocating, he likes to play golf, work out, and watch, of course, Philly sports teams. So we are so happy to have Harvey here. And with him, we have Vicki Singer-Wolf, who is also a Philly girl. She is the mother to three sons and three daughter-in-laws. She has six beautiful grandchildren. She is a four-time breast cancer survivor, carrier of the BRCA2 genetic mutation, and also co-founder of His Breast Cancer Awareness. She is the co-founder also of Gary's World of Wellness and LuckyVitamin.com. And with that, her passion has always been in the health and wellness industry. She received her first breast cancer diagnosis at the age of 37, shortly after her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And when she's not helping to educate and save lives, she enjoys spending time with her family, exercising her body and her mind. And she says she's learned that me time is a priority too, something I think we all need a reminder of. Together, Harvey and Vicki in 2010 created His Breast Cancer Awareness with a mission to educate and support men who are not only at risk, but those who are diagnosed with male breast cancer and hereditary cancers. So without further ado, I'd like to bring in our two guests, Harvey and Vicki from His Breast Cancer Awareness. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, we're so happy to have you.
Our pleasure.
And so happy to have you as partners of Unite for Her as well.
We really, if we can enjoy working with another organization in this, because of these issues and lifestyles out there, it's a great opportunity to be partnered with and with her care box and his care box that Unite for Her puts together. So we really appreciate that, their focus on men as well.
Definitely, definitely. We know that it's so important, and looking to both of you and your foundation to really help provide a lot of that educational material, especially in our His Care box. So we love that. And I think that this is a great place to start. I know we'll be plugging your website in our chat so that those that either have a diagnosis or have family or friends with a diagnosis can access your information. But I think a good place to start in terms of questions is just having you share with us a little bit about what you do at His Breast Cancer Awareness. What are some of your initiatives?
Well, as you mentioned, we were founded, in 2010, kind of started 2009, and after my multiple diagnosis and having the genetic testing completed to discover that, I carried the BRCA2 genetic mutation and shared that with Harvey. He heard it, but his thoughts were, breast cancer, and didn't think that really pertained to him. So when shortly after he discovered a lump, and moving forward, mammograms, biopsies, and in the end, mastectomy, and so on. What we found was there was just very little information out there for, if any, for men, dealing with breast cancer diagnosis or even a risk of. The most we could find is what it was like to be a man supporting his wife or girlfriend. And we just felt, Harvey has 2 sons, I have 3 sons, and we wanted it to be different for them, if nothing more. The stigma that goes with a breast cancer diagnosis of, the world of pink, we wanted to bring some blue into that world. And we just felt that there was definitely a need. Men, don't share a lot about their own health. They're not always forthright in seeing their doctor when they notice something. And with men, it's much later often when it's diagnosed. So we just needed a place for men to know that there was something for them, that they could come, ask questions, get information, talk about possible ways for some prevention, and what to do if they are diagnosed, and how can they talk to somebody else and they're not alone. It's in this world of pink.
Yeah.
So, ultimately our goals and mission is to be there to help educate for an earlier diagnosis. That's the key for men. It's often found when it's much further progressed. So being aware, that's the first part. Being aware that men have breast tissue and can be diagnosed with breast cancer. That's number one. And then obviously after that, being there to help provide those that are diagnosed with some support through the process and the steps, what biopsies, what treatment, what hormone positive means, all those questions that need to be answered.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to know that there is a place. And is one of your initiatives to bring the support to other people that have a similar diagnosis? Is that something that your members or those that become part of your organization, is that something that they can expect as well?
Absolutely. We're there to help if they want to talk with another guy that's been diagnosed. Of course, Harvey's always available. We have, unfortunately, many others that we can connect people with. And we are international. I mean, you can reach us, just send an email, and we'll get you to the right person that, is a good match and somebody that you can talk with.
That's wonderful. And we'll be sure to share your contact information before we disconnect today, because I think that's really important to make sure that that those that are watching and those that watch in the future know where they can go for that support. That's wonderful. So let's talk about the prevalence of breast cancer in men. What is the diagnosis rate like in males?
All right. So last year, actually on average for the last 10 years since we've been tracking it, it's about 2,600 or so men a year in the United States will be diagnosed. We don't really have a lot of international numbers, but we know there are cases around the world. We link with people in Australia and the UK. Obviously, the leading cause of male breast cancer, outside of some environmental clusters, like around Ground Zero, there was a cluster. But for the leading cause overall is the genetic factor, and BRCA2 mutations are the leader of that group. There are some BRCA1 mutations that cause male breast cancer, but it's much more prevalent in BRCA2. It's listed about 1 in every 100 breast cancer diagnoses are men. I think that's a little bit high. Actually, it's probably less than that, but less than 1% is what they quote. 1 in 833 cases is probably more likely, especially hormonally driven or genetically driven. So it's not a big number, but it's a big number if it's you or if it's somebody you love, or you say, oh, and I kind of, as Vicki alluded to, I kind of shoo-shooed it when she first told me about it. She goes, well, you can get breast cancer. I'm not getting breast cancer, but well, you can get prostate cancer, pancreatic cancer, melanoma from the BRCA2 mutation. And until I felt the lump, I kind of ignored that information. And I think that's prevalent with guys overall. I think guys, they're not as in tune with their health as women for whatever reason, because it's not macho to go to the doctor, I guess. It's not macho to ask questions. It's not macho to admit that you have a problem. And then one of the last things they're looking for is breast cancer, because it's not what they think of them when they think of themselves. So of your breast, he'll do a breast check. If you're a woman, it's an automatic, right? If you go to your doctor for an annual, it's automatic. If it's a guy, it's not. So, if you ask, he'll do it because he obviously does it all day long for the females, or she does it all day long for the females. So I just think that people need to know that it exists. And the problem is it's later stage diagnosed, and later stage creates a lot more problems. So that's the statistics of it, but easy for me to say, the statistics of it, but just being aware will change the statistics greatly.
Yeah. Is there a typical age that you're finding among men at diagnosis, or does that really vary?
You want to take
statistics again show, around age 60 to 70 is when it's most prevalent. However, Harvey obviously was in his 50s. We know men in their 30s, 40s. So, I don't know if that statistic actually even matters what the prevalence of age is. Look, I was 37 at my first diagnosis, and that was young. And, our mother was diagnosed in her 70s, our aunt in their 70s. So I really thought, all right, something I have to think about, but I have years before I really have to concern myself with it, and just was going along with, the mammograms, annual mammograms. And when my mother was with me the first time I had, it was my second mammogram. It was right after she was diagnosed. And I walked out of the room, and I literally didn't get out the doorway when she looked at me and she said, "That took too long. What's wrong?"
Oh.
And I said, well, they think they see something, so yeah. So I don't know if that age number makes a difference. Again, it comes down to being aware, being educated, knowing your familial risk, and knowing your genetic risk. And I know you'll hear us say that several times throughout this conversation, but it's so important. It's such important information. I mean, everybody's getting together this year for Thanksgiving and Christmas and Hanukkah and the holidays, whatever you celebrate. And it's a great time to talk about, your family history. And men often know that maybe an aunt or a grandmother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and they don't think that has anything to do with them, but, and it does. And it's not just a matter of, a prostate or a pancreatic cancer. I mean, it comes, especially genetic mutations are passed down from a mother or a father, and I can say, but, it can easily go from, your mom or your dad to your brother, your sister, your uncle. No gender is.
Yeah, I think what people don't realize is that half the people in the world that are carrying a genetic mutation are men. Because they named it BR breast CA cancer, they think it doesn't apply to men. So men are less likely to get tested for genetics. That's just the facts. The facts are 50% of all the genetic mutation carriers in the world are men. They just don't seem to align it with what they need to know. As a BRCA2 mutation carrier, as a male, you have about a 6.5% chance that you're going to develop breast cancer. So not a big number, but it's a big number if you're a female. It's like upward of 75, 80%, right? Somewhere in your lifetime, you're going to get breast cancer from it. But, statistics are only important, like I said, when it's not you or it's not somebody you love. So, You need to know this. And I think as we're getting over the years, we have seen a more preponderance of men getting genetically tested. I know Vicki and my children have all been tested. You have to know if there's a history there. It's easy today. Genetic counseling is available to everybody. It's worth it to know what's going on, so you know what to look for. And a lot of people say, well, I don't want to know. I don't want to live my life in fear. But it's education is not fear. It just gives you knowledge to know how to screen. That's basically what it's so good for. So yeah, it's we're still working on the men. It's gotten a lot better than when we started 11 years ago, but
Yeah.
it's still, we got a long way to go.
Well, and I'm glad that you brought up the genetic testing, because you're right. You know, you think of, okay, if I have a family history of breast cancer, likely in a female, you know, let's get the females tested for the genetic. But also thinking that, yes, even the men in the family should be tested as well. It's not second nature, I think, to have that thought process. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Well, I also think that most women that get breast cancer, that get genetically tested, don't realize they could have gotten it from their father. You
Yeah.
know, they don't make that assumption. It's like, oh, I must have got it from my mother. And, oh, my mother never had breast cancer. So I'll ask, well, you know, who on your father's side had it, or who on your father's side had prostate cancer at an early onset age.
Right.
So, you know, it can come from either side. It doesn't, you know, have to be from the mother to the daughter or the mother to the son. It's father to the daughter, father to the son. It's,
Right.
It's strictly just straight on 50% odds.
Yeah. And if there were, you know, if there are men out there that are now starting to think, okay, I do have this family history, I really should look into genetic testing. Is that something that they could walk into their primary care doctor and say, listen, here's my family history, I want to get genetically tested? Do you know, is it something that's as simple as that, or do they have to go to a particular specialist?
Well, I'm going to say, yeah. I mean, you can start there, absolutely, and they may be able to direct you to the best local source.
Yeah.
We do have available on our website, and or you can Google it, for genetic counselors, genetic testing. They are all over the world. So depending on where your location is, we're in Philadelphia. We deal a lot with the Vassar Center, University of Pennsylvania, great source for testing.
Yeah.
J Screen is out there. You know, there. I mean, I'm not going to necessarily say all the names of the ones online. I think some are better. Some test very minimal. Others are more broad spectrum, because even, you know, with male breast cancer, things like CHEK2, PTNN, PALB2, there are so many mutations now, and they are finding more and more and more every day. So, you know, going through a full gambit of testing in the right environment, I think, is extremely important. It's more than just knowing your ancestry. So yeah, but it's absolutely easy to find and easy to do, whether it's a home kit or you're going through, you know, a professional medical organization. I think what's really important with that, with genetic testing, is the genetic counseling piece of it, because you need to know the information you're about to receive. What effect does that have on your life? And, you know, you may be in your 20s or 30s. It's decisions about how you're going to proceed with, you know, family bearing, and, you know, because now there are even other options out there. So I think genetic counseling is really the key to getting your questions answered and being there for the support of that and how to proceed. For us, I can tell you that for men, what's usually recommended is around age 35, or when you're ready to start your family. And baseline mammograms, kind of where it begins, or an ultrasound after, you know, if you do carry the mutation, there is that follow-up. Self-breast exams, you know, knowing that you're at a higher risk, performing a self-breast exam. A man can do that. We have information on our website that will show that as well. We have a very informative pamphlet that we printed, nice paper, stock, very filled with lots of information, actually a whole page on BRCA 1 and 2. And in here is also how to, the website as well. But these pamphlets are available if you're having any kind of awareness, charitable organization set up that you want, or doctor's office, medical office, and you just want to have that information available, we can send those out as well. But yeah, men need to know that they can, and should be aware of their bodies and any changes that happen, and then especially again that knowledge of having the genetic testing, that you're at a higher risk.
And I'm also glad you mentioned, Vicki, the genetic counseling component, because I think some people may feel, Harvey, like you said, okay, I get these results. I don't know if I want it. I don't know what's the next. So to know that there's a counselor that can sort of talk them through that there's a professional to sort of say, okay, here's what we do now. Here's how we reduce risk. Here's how you can understand the results of it. And you're just kind of not left to your own devices. It's good to know that there's that sort of follow-up component for those that aren't aware. And I wanted to say we did include the link for the information on your website about how men can perform their own self-breast exam, which I know we'll get to in just a moment, but I wanted to make sure we have that on the chat as well, because I think that that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Going back to the statistics a little bit, just thinking in terms of incidence, is there any information pointing to higher risk for any particular race or cultural background? Is any of that information known?
Yeah, they're the one group that's the highest in the BRCA2 mutation field are Ashkenazi Jews, Jews that migrated from Eastern Europe, and anybody that not just into the States but wherever they migrated. There's a lot of South Africans that have migrated. The Jewish people migrated from there, so there's a prevalence of that. It's the by far the highest group to contain this mutation of the BRCA2 mutation. There's a lot running through the African American community. We just don't have a lot of the statistics yet on it. It's familial, so it's going to run down through. That's how mutations run. They're genetic. They run through your family. As a kid, we as being Jewish kid, we heard about Tay-Sachs. That was the big thing that we heard about at those time. In the African American community, it was sickle cell anemia. It probably still is. And we're just being able to put the genetic mutations. I mean, genetics have been like so propelled in the last 15 years. And the field of genetic counseling, which is what, like you said, you're much better off. Yes, there's online organizations you can use to get this testing, but to have a genetic counselor, which is pretty much available in every major medical center in the world now, they have a genetic counseling. It's one of the hottest job opportunities for people. It's funny because it's still a pretty female-dominated industry right now on the new classes. There's a class out of UCLA that we associate with that I every once in a while sit in on as a guest speaker. And the last one was all women. It was 26 women, no guys in the field. But they can help you. They can guide you. And then you don't feel alone. Otherwise, you get this diagnosis. And I could see where it would be overwhelming, to all of a sudden, oh, my God, I'm susceptible to get these cancers. What do I do about it? So having somebody roadmap that is, I think. But yeah, we're finding more and more statistics it's definitely familiar. It's definitely one group or another, but we know for a fact that 1 in 40 Jewish people carry this mutation. That's a pretty high statistic, 1 in 40.
Yeah.
So, you have to understand your risks to understand how to combat those risks.
Okay. Interesting. And so when there is a diagnosis, in continuing to speak a little bit about the genetic component, are the majority of male breast cancer diagnoses, are they genetically driven? Is there a breakup, between being genetically driven and hormone driven? What does that look like in terms of, what's fueling this diagnosis?
You want to take it, Vic?
Sure. Well, predominantly for men, it is actually hormonally driven.
Okay.
And estrogen being the key. For now, medication-wise, where women's has really developed and grown into from tamoxifen and a variety of aromatase inhibitors. There hasn't been that much testing for obvious reasons, on men with some of the newer drugs. But so still the protocol is usually tamoxifen, varying amount of time, anywhere from 5 to 10 years. It's treated, overall, it's treated very much the same as women. can be. The only thing different is they rarely will do a lumpectomy like they may for women, because men have so little breast tissue.
Yeah.
They do have breast tissue. Obviously, that's why they can be diagnosed with breast cancer. But there's very little. So in order to get clean margins, it's not often recommended to have a lumpectomy. It's more common to do a full mastectomy to make sure that everything is removed. So, mastectomy, radiation, possibly chemotherapy, again, depending on whether it's later staged in your lymph nodes, or found earlier, as we mentioned for men. It's more often diagnosed when it's much further progressed because nobody's checking.
Mm-hmm.
And so, unfortunately, and that's why the death rate is, percentage-wise is pretty high, because, you're not catching it as early as a woman who's, who may know to do a self-breast exam, is having her physician check her, possibly twice a year if you're at the gynecologist, et cetera. Having that routine mammogram, those things aren't routine for men. So it's when it's much further progressed, but definitely more hormonally driven.
Okay.
Is the predominant diagnosis.
Okay. Okay. And so, as you're saying, Vicki, females were always counseled in terms of getting to know our bodies and doing exams. What do you say to the men in your community, or what is your message in terms of when men should start doing self-breast exams? How often do they do it? And I'm sure, that is a challenge in and of itself, but is there a general recommendation for that?
Again, no different really than a female. When boys are born, they have breast tissue.
Mm-hmm.
Around puberty, it stops producing, and that's why the breast doesn't continue to grow like it does in a female. So again, just, at any time, if you notice a change, symptoms such as like an inverted nipple or some oozing or, release of a fluid from the nipple,
Mm-hmm.
a lump. It's for men most common to find that lump around the nipple. Not that it
Okay.
can't be anywhere else, but that is the common area.
Okay.
So, again, when you're aware enough and old enough or mature enough to know that you could be at risk of a diagnosis, so let's say 18, 20, years of age, it's important to get to know your body. Just like anything. I mean, no different than testicular cancer. If you see a lump, if you see something that's abnormal, you want to mention it to your doctor. We hear so many times where men say they thought that, they had soreness because they worked out at the gym, had a good physical workout, and they thought it was muscular. Or possibly they were at their doctor, and if you're, lucky enough, your internist is checking and looking and notices something and says, let's get this checked.
Mm-hmm.
But performing a self-breast exam, that's easy, no different again, like as a female, once a month in the shower. If you've got a girlfriend, a spouse, you can share it, do it with each other, make it fun.
Yeah.
make it part of your lifestyle there of, romance. And, and it's important again for women to realize that they need to educate the men too, and help them through that if they can.
Yeah. And I like what you said. I know we're trying to bring Harvey back on. But I like what you said, we're getting together for the holidays. Let's just start to normalize the conversation about family history, about what we should know about. And with that, what are we going to do at home? How to, getting to know our bodies and normalizing that whole conversation and those behaviors so that hopefully, both men and women in the family are being monitoring and being aware of that. I love that you said that.
Right. There's the check on the first, you see that a lot in women's groups. Can work the same for the men, pick your date, pick whatever works for you, your lucky number, and, monthly, just feel around, that's it. I mean, you want to check in the lymph nodes, top, bottom, but especially around the nipple area and to look for changes in that nipple.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Let's talk. Let's talk lifestyle. Let's talk high risk factors. So, in the female breast cancer world, our communication, we talk about certain lifestyle factors that may increase a person's risk of development. Are they the same in the male community, or do we know there are known lifestyle factors that will increase a person's risk, genetics aside?
Absolutely. Again, I think it goes along with anybody. I like to say we are what we eat. We are what we put in and on our body. So we all know alcohol should be limited, if not avoided completely. One drink a night. So you want to limit your intake of alcohol. Smoking, obviously, and I mean, the main diet, exercise, even 30 minutes of a gentle walk, whatever gets you out there and gets your body moving and gets your blood circulating. It also helps meditation to de-stress anything, or just a general walk if it helps you to de-stress a little bit. I strongly believe that stress plays an important part. This isn't just physical. So especially knowing the hormonal factor plays a part. I believe making some healthier choices, choosing some organic foods where they're really important, because unfortunately a lot of the chickens, the cattle, they're all pumped with hormones to make them bigger, plumper, get more out of them. Everybody wants that big chicken, but it does have an effect. And, if that chicken has been given hormones to help plump it up, then you are ingesting those hormones as well. So to me, making some good, healthy, organic choices makes a difference. I believe in a strong plant-based diet. They are just making, it's kind of like good, better, best decisions. Everybody's going to have some ice cream, some cookies, some sweets. We all want that. And there's, I don't think there's a reason not to have those. And if that's what you enjoy, but I do think there's that quantity that you have to concern yourself with, and how often are you, and
right.
So lifestyle and what we eat and what we do, our diet, also supplementation. Seeing your doctor, a good question to ask is having your vitamin D levels checked.
Definitely. Yeah.
So, taking a vitamin D supplement can be helpful. Healthy lifestyle can make a difference.
Such a difference.
I've always lived a healthy lifestyle, and even before my first diagnosis, or up to my first couple diagnoses, and I remember looking at my breast surgeon after my second bout with breast cancer, and I looked at him and said, well, what can I do? And I didn't even know about the genetic part for me yet. I didn't even know I carried the genetic mutation.
Okay.
But I said, well, what can I do? And, I got the answer, well, we're going to do a mammogram every 6 months, or a breast MRI or whatever. And I'm like, but there must be something I can be doing. Like, you feel like you want to take some control. You want to feel like you have some control over this.
Yes.
And the more I researched and with my husband, we found that, although I was living a healthy lifestyle, I could live a healthier lifestyle. Yeah. And, and made some adjustments to include that. And, yes, have I been diagnosed 4 times? Yes. But maybe I wouldn't have found it. Maybe it would have been more aggressive. Maybe I would have found it much later, and I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you. So I do believe that all that does play a part, a helpful part. It's important. And, the genetic part of it, my body says, it has a hard time. People don't understand about the BRCA gene. Everybody has the BRCA gene. Everybody. It's when you have a mutation in that link of the cells that that's when it becomes a problem. So my body doesn't destroy those cancer cells as easily as somebody else's body does. So I'm just trying to help that along by giving it a better environment.
There you go. I think that's really well put, right? You know, like even with the genetic mutation, you are assisting, you're doing what you can to right, provide the best environment you can. That was really well put. Harvey, from a lifestyle perspective, with your diagnosis, was there anything that you found that you could have, should have, or you know, in your own learning from your perspective, any sort of risk factors that you know may have addressed to you personally?
Yeah, well, once I found out about what I was dealing with, to me, it's the sugar. Sugar really taxes your immune system, depletes your immune system's ability to fight the cancer cells. So the thing with alcohol is not so much it's alcohol, but alcohol is basically turns to sugar in your system. So any kind of carbohydrates turn to sugar. So yeah, we all try and lessen our carbohydrates because it's easier to lose weight without all those carbohydrates and all that good stuff. But the sugar really depletes your body's ability to fight. What Vicki was saying about the BRCA gene, everybody has it, and it's there to protect you from getting cancer. And when it mutates, that's why it makes you so susceptible. I'm very conscious of organics, especially in milk, chicken, eggs, places where they hit the hormones heavily to increase the yield, more milk, more eggs. Every once in a while, I'll be walking through the supermarket and I'll see a woman with 3 young kids and 2 or 3 young girls, and they pick up the inorganic eggs. And I so want to like tap them on the shoulder and say, you know, it's worth $1 more to protect your kids. But it's not my place to do that. But you see it all the time, and nobody understands why that is. But I don't like eggs that are not organic. I don't like chicken that's not organic. It's just, and maybe it's helping, maybe it's not, but it certainly helps me emotionally to be prepared for it. I still like to exercise. I think when you're overweight, I think your body also loses some ability to fight. So even though I could probably lose about 5 or 10 right now, I still try and keep it at a certain level to make sure I'm not taxing it. You know, I grew up in a time where recreational drugs were pretty prevalent. And I won't say that I was an angel at those days, but these days I'm much more, I don't go near that kind of stuff. I just have no interest in it. I have enough going on. I take enough pharmaceutical meds. I don't need any other stuff mixing with it these days. So I think lifestyle has a lot to do with it, but you know, you can't change your genetics. You can help it, but you can't change them. So being aware is just so crucial to this whole formula to try and stay healthy.
Yeah. I love that. And just kind of like what you said, doing what you can to control. I know, and just reading your bio, you know, I hear both of you like to stay active, and just including that as part of one of the things you can do. Vicki, you mentioned stress, you know, we talk about food. So it's good to hear a lot of those messages that we might share with our female community, you know, that yes, 100%, we want to be advocating that in our male community as well, for sure. Wonderful.
I think the more you're educated, the more you're able to work with your medical team too. You know, when people come to me, the first thing I tell them is, you know, this is your new most important full-time job, is understanding what you're dealing with. Yes, you can rely on your medical professionals, but it's a two-way street. And if you don't understand and ask the right questions and advocate, they're just going to put you through like whatever protocols they think are working. And a lot of those protocols are based on the hospital they're affiliated. If you're in New York and Sloan Kettering puts out a certain procedural way to handle this, they'll follow that. One thing Vicki and I both found is that we challenge our doctors for diagnosis and how to deal with stuff. You know, yes, they're smarter than we are and they went to school for this, but we're pretty invested in what we're dealing with. So we can ask the proper questions, and we can help others ask those questions too if they want to give us the opportunity to help you.
Yeah. And I love that because, you know, having your organization, having a place that men can go to so that they can connect with one another, so that if this is totally over their head, they have a community that can say, like, what do I do? What do I ask? What are those questions? What did you hear? What are you doing? And so they feel like they're not in this alone. I think that that's really, really important, because you're right. Like, men may not feel, they don't know where to turn, or they don't feel like they can open up and be vulnerable like that, but maybe they can with other men that understand, hey, I'm here with you. I know how you're feeling.
Exactly.
It's a very emasculating
Yeah.
diagnosis to have as a guy. I mean, I still remember the first time I started telling my golf buddies about it, what I was dealing with. They said, "Oh, do you want to play from the red tees, the women's tees?" They found it
Oh,
funny, which was fine because I know these guys, but
yeah.
that's the way it is. And there's been a lot of celebrity people males that have had this diagnosis that won't come out
Hmm.
and talk about it
Wow.
because they're afraid it's going to tarnish their image or people are going to think less of them or
Wow.
it's kind of crazy, but that's just the way it is. And guys, they don't want to be associated with this. So our foundation gives them a place that they can come and feel like they're not in this world of pink, that they're not, all about Susan G. Komen, which is a great organization, but for years they didn't really they weren't inclusive of guys.
Hmm.
They are now, which is great.
Hmm.
But you need a place where you can go because you just can't have that. These are very, very important conversations and very blunt conversations. And if you can't have a blunt conversation with somebody, you're not going to feel comfortable with your decisions. So
Right.
that's all. It's tough, and that's the reason we started this. We started this so
Yeah.
we could have a place for guys, could make it different for the next guy, and
Yep.
God forbid one of our kids, because like Vicki said, we have 5 boys between us. So
Yeah.
just give them a place.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that this is a great place to wrap up. And Sue just commented, Sue, she is so happy that we have you as one of our partners, that we're able to share your educational information in his care box, and be that voice for our male community as well. So yeah, we're super happy to have you. So with that being said, if there is someone that's watching now, or like I said, we have wonderful viewership in the future, we'll always share this conversation. Where can they go to get connected with his breast cancer awareness? We have your website. If they wanted to reach out individually, how do they do that?
Right on the website, or they can email directly to hisbreastcancer@gmail.com. His
His
breast
breast
cancer.
cancer.
Okay.
At Gmail, right?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Or there's a link on our site. But yeah, we answer, I can tell you 100%. Vicki and I respond usually within 48 hours to anything that we get in an inquiry.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, and we'll include that email. I just popped the link to your general page also in our chat again for those to see. So that is wonderful. Okay.
You guys do an amazing job. We appreciate your partnership. Yeah, you guys are amazing.
Well, and we really rely on organizations like yours to help us close that gap together and to build awareness and make sure that we are empowering the male community as well. So we're so thankful to be able to work together for sure. And I'm sure that we will have you back because we want to continue this conversation. We want to continue sharing your organization and your partnership because we do feel like what you do is so invaluable.
Anytime. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so
wonderful.
much.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, well, again, I want to thank our guest speakers, Vicki and Harvey from His Breast Cancer Awareness. You can visit hisbreastcancer.org to learn more or to get connected with them. We'll be sure to share the email address. This video will also be on our Her library for future viewing, so you'll be able to view that video very shortly. Again, I want to give a big thanks to our sponsor. This Ask the Experts episode was presented by Merck. And again, we thank them for their support so we can continue to share important points, for example, male breast cancer. So I want to share our next Ask the Experts episode will be happening a little earlier than normal in December. It'll be taking place on Thursday, December 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be having a Q&A session for caregivers, and we'll be having a guest host from Imerman Angel. So we're so excited to have her talking a little bit about caregivers and some common questions around being a caregiver and what comes with that. So with that being said, I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Vicki and Harvey for being our special guests today, and we will see everyone next time.